Hi everyone. Well, today's December 6th, 2011. 94 years ago, today, an event took place in Halifax Harbor that has had a profound effect on my life, my parents' life, my whole family, both sides of the family. Halifax Explosion. For those of you who don't know about the Halifax Explosion was the largest man-made explosion up until 1945 when they exploded the first atomic bomb. Now, thing is that it happened in the north end of Halifax. Basically, what happened? There were two ships, one coming in and one going out. One was a Belgian relief ship full of clothing and materials, to help Belgian civilians. And the other one was a munition ship. Now, basically what happens is that they collide in the narrows of the harbor, and the munition ship caught on fire. The crew panicked and abandoned ship and headed over to the Dartmouth side of the harbor. In the meantime, the ship is on fire and it's slowly heading towards the piers, Pier 9 in North End Halifax. Hundreds of people went down to see it. Now, my family home, my dad's family home, was about 800 meters from Pier 9. And about 8:45 in the morning, because, let me explain this. My dad wasn't in school because what happened was one of the schools burned down, and they did that double shift thing. They had one school going in the morning and another school going in the afternoon. And he didn't have to go until 1 o'clock to go to school. So he was in bed. Knock came on the door. My grandmother answered the door, and it was a friend of his, a guy named Archie. And he said to my grandmother, there's a fire down on Pier 9, and could he come down and does he want to come down? She said, well, he's still in bed. I'm just getting him up now. I'll tell him. And off he went. Well, that was the last anybody saw of him. He went down to Pier 9. My dad got up, and he told me, he said he came down and he was warming his clothes on the wood stove. Now, until I moved out into the country, I never understood that concept, but I understand it now, especially in the wintertime. So anyway, he's playing checkers with his older sister, whose husband is overseas. And my grandmother is making breakfast for Dad. There was a flash of light. Dad told me that his mother said, "What was that?" And the next thing he knew, he woke up in Camp Hill Hospital. And he said Camp Hill was so overwhelmed, they were putting people to a bed, and he said he was in bed with this guy who was moaning, and then he stopped as he died. And Dad got out and went out and sat in the hall. He was cut and bruised and everything like that. What had happened, they figure he got blown out through the window. His mother and sister weren't so lucky. They were knocked unconscious. The stove was knocked over, and the house caught fire, and they burned to death. Now, there was another, my aunt was upstairs. She had just had a baby, and she got blown out down onto the street with the baby in the bed. The bed and all just went down, and they survived. That was my cousin Jack. But anyway, my dad was picked up by a guy who was heading north with a horse and cart, and I knew this man, and my mother hated him because he was the guy he saved a lot of people that day. He was going around, and anybody who was hurt, he put them on his cart and took them out to Camp Hill, and he made multiple runs. He was quite a hero. And uh, Mom hated him because he saved Dad, because in later years she hated him. Mom and Dad had this hate relationship going. Anyway, but they were, Dad, that's basically what happened on that day. Now my mother, she told me she was about 5 at the time, and she was standing in the window playing with her dollies. And the window came in on her, and a big shard of glass went down into her back. And Mom told me that everybody started screaming, "The Germans are here! The Germans are here!" Right? They figured that the Germans were attacking, and I guess there was quite a panic. But anyway, my grandmother, my other grandmother, Mom's mother, she was split from here to here by a shard of glass. Didn't touch her eye. And my her sister was standing under the smoke pipe. It came down on her, and she was all covered in soot. But anyway, they got everybody together and got out of the house. And my great-grandmother was there, and they started heading to Camp Hill because they were hurt. And my mom was going. The soldiers were coming out. They called out the army, and my mother was hitting with her family, and a soldier saw her, and he had a blanket, and my mother was going, "Don't hurt my shoulder! Don't hurt my shoulder!" Right? And they looked, and they saw this piece of glass sticking out, and my great-grandmother, took her apron, and she grabbed the glass, and they pulled it out. And anyway, they got to Camp Hill Hospital. They were sitting in the hall because they were just overwhelmed, and they were across from some kind of changing room, and there was a young nurse who kept on. The nurses used to wear the habits in those days, and the young nurse would put the habit on, look in the mirror, and take it off, put it on, and Mom said all the women were going, "Why doesn't she help us? Why doesn't she help us?" Years later, I was talking to my doctor about this, and I figured that the nurse was in shock. She was only a kid, and she was just overwhelmed by it, and she just couldn't deal with it. And he agreed with me. But there's an interesting story about my mother and that shard of glass. When she died, she'd been a smoker all her life, and she died at age 86. The day that she died, I got a call from the hospital, and this doctor introduced herself, and she said, "I'm head of the teaching department at the hospital here, and we would like to do an autopsy on your mother, although it's not necessary because, well, she was 86 years old, and we pretty well know what she died of." She said, would that be possible? And I said, "Well, why?" And she said, "Well, your mother started smoking at 14, so she smoked for 72 years. We don't get an opportunity to look at a set of lungs that have smoked for 72 years. And I said, "Well, yeah, go ahead, but under one condition." I said, "In her back, you'll find some glass. And I want it." She said, "Done." She said, and I said, "I want a copy of the autopsy." She said, "Not a problem." She said, "It'll be at the doctor's, and he'll go through it and explain it to you, and the glass will be there." So about 3 weeks later, I get a call from my doctor. Said, "Come on out. I've got some stuff here for you." So I went out, and he hands me the glass, and he said, "What is that?" And I just told him the story what I told you. So we talked about the explosion quite a bit, and that. But I still have the glass somewhere. It's packed away. I haven't seen it for a while, but I still have it. But the Halifax explosion, at the end of it, getting back to that, at the end of it, my family, Dad's side of the family, lost their home, lost my grandmother, my aunt, Uh, my great grandfather, or my grandfather, was hurt so severe he was never able to work again. He was working in the sugar refinery. Um, Aunts were working in the cotton mill up on Roby Street, and they were all cut with glass. On my mother's side, um, my cousin, I did a video a while about Ralph Vaughn, who was killed at Passchendaele, Dickie Vaughn. His mother was killed, um, who was a cousin. My mother's uncle was killed, and well, it worked. I had calculated one day. It was five. There was 5 killed, and I forget the other one that was killed. But there were 5 killed. No, there was 4 killed in the explosion, and about 30 wounded. So it had a major effect, and the effect that we lost our home, and until I guess it was 2004, I paid off the house. So basically, it took from 1917 to 2004 before the family recovered, and it had major effects. I remember there was a big fire down on the waterfront when I was a kid, and Dad made me go up and get behind Fort Needham and stay there until he came and got me. They were so, and anytime there were sirens go or explosions going in the harbor, they jumped. Both Mom and Dad jumped. It spooked them for the rest of their lives. In that explosion, 2,100 people from the north end of Halifax, which was the working class area of Halifax, Old Richmond, it was called, were killed, and thousands injured, and millions of dollars in damage. Like I said, it was the largest explosion until 1945. It was a dilly, and we have to, and I have to say, even after all these years, my dad and both Mom and Dad were very grateful for the people of Massachusetts. Every year they have a big Christmas tree lighting in Boston, and that tree comes from Halifax, courtesy of Halifax. We send them a Christmas tree every year because the people of Boston and the people of Massachusetts and New England and New York, they came to our aid in a major way. And to the American people, I say thank you. Sorry about kidding. I get emotional about this. Till the next time.